Hello everyone, welcome back to the KMTRADERS channel. So this is the full market analysis volume 118. So just going to give an insight of what we've got up ahead next week and also compare our analysis from last week also. So we are looking at gold. So what we were basically looking at from last week was pretty much a turnover towards the downside. So as we can see, pretty much price has just slowly been stepping up nicely. I still think that there is a possibility that price can make this low that we're suggesting. With all that being said, we can see that price is still stepping up, and I believe there is some, within that length of last week's move, there is obviously some nice pips to be gained either way. So we're looking at around 400, 300 pips there. So I think if we do see price drop off next week, or eventually if we eventually get that drop off, there is going to be at least a good 100, 300 pip move to the downside, at least at a minimum. And so I think this would be the next big move for gold. So we're just going to have to participate and just basically just wait for this to unfold. So for me, I'm not going to be rushing into gold. I'm just going to kind of step back and just see what can come from this, but ultimately we're trying to look out for some sell-offs. Okay, so taking that on, we can look into EURUSD. So looking at the end of the week, we can see price had really just been tapping around the 1.85 area, 1.085 area. Prior to that, the analysis from last week was pretty much we're looking at some sort of bullish move towards the upside. So I was probably expecting some sells either to take out this low here and to head into 0.108, or the second one was we'd start to see that bullish impulse towards the upside. So that start of bullish momentum, that's what we're pretty much waiting for. So for this week, what we're going to be looking for is pretty much a similar story. We're going to be either expecting price to make its way down maybe just a little bit more, but really we want to wait for this bullish intention towards the upside, and hopefully if we can ride that momentum, we should be able to start to see, I'm expecting basically higher prices just to start off with. As we know from a very long time, EURUSD and mainly the US dollars has just really been getting stronger. So this is been going down. So pretty much I'm expecting the dollar to get a little bit weaker soon. So we're just waiting for price to just reflect that, let's just say. So what I'm going to be doing, again, like I said, is just waiting for some sells if we can. The momentum is still pushing lower. I'm liking the sign of that. Strong push low, and consistency is pushing lower, but I wouldn't be surprised if we started to see some bullish candles coming into play next week. So that's what we're really just waiting out for. Okay, and that's going to be a similar thing that we're going to be looking out for in the other pairs. So let me just go ahead and take a look into this. So for NZDUSD, we're going to be just on the lookout for pretty much some sells, but we're in a bit of a tricky situation. I do believe we're finding some sort of hesitation around here, even though we do have that strong sell-off. Price for me, as it's as it pushed lower, doesn't really look too strong. So momentum wise, it could be weakening. So this is why I've got two scenarios in mind here. And that is essentially we'll either get a pullback at some point. So regardless if we go lower than last week's low, we'll either go make a little pullback and then we'll start to drop off, or the other one is we will start to see that momentum shift upwards. And so what I would do then is probably look out for more of a retest entry trade, and so with that we're just waiting for that momentum first before we get involved, or before we even think about getting involved for any potential buys. But again, we're going to be around that 50-50 area where we're probably looking for some buys to fulfill this idea, but then we could expect some sells to play out as well. So we're pretty much in a range. We've got some support level there that we can just be mindful of. We've got a zone at 0.67. So again, if we go lower than this, I do believe we could be expecting more bearish pressure into this. But again, with the Euro USD, if we do see price pushing up, or we expect that to happen, then we're not entirely sure if this is going to reflect the same thing, or if we going to expect more sell-offs. So I'm just trying to play a bit of confluences together and see what we can gain overall with the US dollar, and just kind of play with that really. So with AUD USD, I always say it's pretty much, they have similar tendencies with NZDUSD, but what I'm suggesting for this again is pretty much that 50-50 play with NZDUSD. So what I'm going to be looking out for is that possibility where we find that momentum push towards the upside, regardless if we make new lows for this week. So we could get price to drop low and then push up higher. That's an alternative that we can look at, and also that we can potentially look at some sell. So normally I do try and give you a bias that I'm looking for, but with certain cases when we do get into the market and there is a 50-50 scenario, they do happen. And like I said, I think if you have been following us for some time, there are occasions where I do 50-50 scenarios where we're looking for both buys and sells, but most of the time I do try and give a clear direction of what I'm thinking on seeing. But yeah, like I said, this is pretty much another one of those 50-50 scenarios. So let's try and look at USDJPY. So with this one, what we are looking out for, so last week we pretty much was looking at this level here, and we can see that price broke above, and we can start to see some sort of continuations up towards the upside. So it wouldn't have necessarily been wrong to take a sell here, but although I wouldn't personally would not have been convinced, because in my second scenario I said if we start to see some rejections, I personally wouldn't have said any rejections apart from this double top here again. But I think this here wasn't really that strong. It wasn't necessarily for me that powerful. I think this candle here indicates a little bit more of bullish pressure. So what we ended up looking at was what ended up unfolding was pretty much this continuation play higher. So what am I going to be looking out for this week? Well, so essentially, as price is going up anyway, what I'm going to be mindful of is to see if we are looking at any loss of momentum. So currently we've got some divergence forming on the RSI. So again, that's just when the peaks are not in line with the peaks on the RSI. So we just go ahead and get rid of that. So as you can see, this is sloping up, and RSI's peaks are sloping down, aka divergence. So that's just obviously one sign. Our EMAs are falling upwards, so they're trailing up, so it's indicating that there is some possible upside move still. So what I'm going to be personally looking out for is still this warning sign that price may want to sell off. Okay, so I probably will get rid of the third scenario that we drew in from last week, and that was in the event where price would reject 125, but obviously we've broken through that. So like I was mentioning before, the momentum. Now the RSI divergence doesn't necessarily mean that price is now going to sell off. There is the possibility of it, a higher possibility. So with that being said, we can also keep in mind that price may want to do something like this, and then it could drop off, so then basically attach something like this, like that, and then sell off. So again, I'll just post it, well, I'll just record it on here as something like so we can do a bit of 50-50 kind of play. Again, we don't really necessarily have a direction on this, but mainly what I really want to try and do is try and get some sells off on this, because we've just been pushing up aggressively. Again, the dollar just getting a little bit too strong in my eyes. I think there is a possible chance that price may want to come back down at some point. So again, I'm going to try and stay with the current trend, which is bullish. So if we can try and get some pips to the upside, then that would be great, but we'll see what we can come up with. So looking at CAD JPY, again, three scenarios. So we can go ahead and get rid of this one now, because we were saying that if we don't break above 100 and we get a rejection, we could see price drop off. So that was not the case. We can see price making its ways towards the upside. So if we start to see price moving up right now, we can see that we're just tapping above that. So ideally, the intention for this is now to see if we can, continue going either higher, or are we going to continue to drop off lower. And again, this is just unfortunately going to be another 50-50 in my eyes. But preferably, I do want to see a sell-off. So I'm personally just going to look for a sell if I can. And also, I will probably also try and find a buy depending on the volume that we start to see and the momentum. But the momentum does look like it's been dying. Again, this is heavy divergence here. We're in the 90s to the 75, so again, divergence there is clearly in play. Oops. Just like so. So I think what we could be just on the mind, just basically just be mindful of, is that price may want to sell off, and if it does, I would not be surprised if it does do that. So just going to keep in mind of the possibilities of that happening, and then we can pretty much look out for those two plays. So again, there is a lot of 50-50 scenarios that we have this week, judging from how everything's been played. So we've got another scenario here with EJ. So we're going to be doing this what we had last week, where if we stay below 137, there is that possibility of price dropping off. So I will keep this as a scenario. The other one is if we break higher, we're going to be looking at some possible retests if we can get some entries in. And we'll probably get rid of this one now that we're at the top side of the range and we've broken out of the channel. So ideally, we just need to wait and see what's the best play for EJ. I'm assuming, or I'm personally going to be trying to see if one of these two scenarios. So we'll have to wait and see what can unfold with EJ. AJ, again, a similar story. Let me just extend this just a little further, but looking at 94-95 range, I probably will take out this for this week, the third scenario. The reason for that is because we're now at the upper side, or at a higher point where price will come into that 94 range, or we may start to see some sort of rejection, or we may see that continuation. So again, another 50-50 scenario here. So again, I feel like this week is probably going to be a little bit more reactive as opposed to predicting a bias. So what I mean by that is price is showing this, it could be a price is showing bullish momentum. Okay, so now I'm going to be looking for buys on this particular pair because it's now breaking out of a range, or it's breaking a certain key level, and pretty much that's kind of what I would prefer to do. I would probably try and find some a pair that I think is moving in one direction, as opposed to trade in a 50-50 one, just purely based on the fact of the possibilities of you being right or wrong, or more likely being right when you're confident with the direction. Just out of my personal experience. But again, it really depends on what your trading style is. So again, we're coming into USD Chef. So what we've got here is basically we're coming into the top end of 95, 0.95. So if we break above here, there could be possible continuation plays. But what I'm probably going to also look out for is, if we start to see some rejection. I'm seeing how prices had a huge rally up, but then it had failed to kind of continue that that momentum. So I'm just kind of curious to see if price can withstand that. It may fall back down a little, but then it could continue back up higher. So this is where a bit of reactions are needed again. So I do believe this is another 50-50 trade. I probably will leave this here for this week, just in case we get into these lows of 91. If we do, we're looking for price to go a little bit higher from the 91 level, but we'll just have to wait. Again, so another 50-50 reactive point. So I actually believe USDCAD is my only one this week where I'm looking for, just one particular bias, and that pretty much is a buy. So again, from last week we said that you could look at some sells, and also look at some counter moves where we look at buys. So weirdly, it is kind of 50-50, but in terms of like the long term, I'm looking for buys mainly. So the reason why I would be looking for sells and taking it is because the downside move, it's still a good 100 or so pips. So for me, that's that's what I'm looking for. So if we start to see that turnover, that will also give us another 100 pips as well. So I will be trying to look at both sides of the markets for USD CAD, but mainly I will be trying to focus on buys, and try and see if we can make that 1.28 kind of run. So that's all I have for this week. It has been quite busy in terms of price pushing, but some of the pairs have just not really moved as much as the prior weeks. But we'll have to see what's going to unfold. And ended last week with bank holiday in certain countries, and Monday tomorrow we'll have certain bank holiday too. So that could obviously affect the market. So I do hope this video does bring you some value, and if it does help, make sure you leave a like, make sure you're subscribed, and we'll see you all next week. Thank you very much for listening, guys.